this? Oh, you're an entrepreneur. Oh, you're a real estate investor. Oh, you're trying to learn from those who did it. Well, come into the lab then. Put your white coat on, gloves on, don't forget the notepad, and let's build, y'all. Real estate experiment. What is happening, y'all? Today we have a very special guest, Wynn. Dan, we got to tell the people how we met, first of all, man, because I don't think this serendipity just happens that way. We were at 10X. He's throwing up the 10X for those of you who are listening. 10X. It was actually pretty epic because I'll tell you one thing that I always notice, and I try to do this all the time, is he was very well prepared. I mean, you had your whole camera set up and you were doing it. You know, people got phones these days, so they could just have their camera out. But you were very, very diligent about what you were doing. And that caught my eye. Obviously, we chopped it up. We talked a little bit, introduced myself. And then next thing you know, we kind of exchanged contacts and kind of went from there. So, Dan, why don't you tell the people where you're at, what it is that you do, what you specialize in real estate. I want to find out who Dan is. It's really important when you come into the lab who the person is, because it is a people's business. We always forget that. We're not just these investors. We're people behind it. So I like to get to know the person. Dan, tell us who you are right now.
All right. Diving into the lab a little bit, a little bit about myself. So I'm Dan Wynn. I am a father. I'm a husband. And I also am an active duty Army officer.
Yes, sir.
On top of that, I also spend a lot of time in investing in real estate. Typically, my strategy for the most part is I buy and hold. In that process, buy, renovate, hold. Usually utilizing like the BRRRR strategy. I got a bunch of little different techniques that I use. That's kind of specific to military investors. So using the VA loan and using strategies like that. So I've used a bunch of different strategies to buy property, buy, hold, and also sell, flip property. Outside of that, I mean, I like to spend time with my family. I mean, that's about it. You know, I go out and network, and I'm also the host of the Financial Freedom Journal podcast and YouTube channel.
That's right.
And that's how we actually initially linked up when we talked at the 10X Growth Conference down there in Miami. It was a great networking event, excellent time, had a phenomenal time, but I ran into great people like Ruben, and we stayed connected. I had to get him on the show after we talked, did a quick interview with him. You guys can check that out on my channel if you like to. But yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
So then obviously that's you today. And what I always like to find out is like, okay, so how did you get there? Clearly, you're obviously, you've been committed as an active duty officer, which I salute to you. And I do send a lot of respect and love to that. And I think you've been doing that for is it 7 years or how long?
Yeah,
have you been doing that for? I've
been in for like 7 years, a little over 7 years now. So yeah.
Yeah. When did real estate come into the play?
So real estate has always been in the play. That was kind of the driving factor. Okay, let me give you a quick background of where we started at. So I went to college, did kind of the same route everybody is told to do. You know, you go to school, you make good grades, you go to college, and then you're supposed to get out and, work for a great job and pretty much do that until you retire, right? Yeah. So I was following that path. I went to school to be a nurse. I went to double major in nursing and radiology. I went to school and I took some really tough courses. I knew myself, I'm not a morning person, but for some reason I told myself, hey, I'm going to change and I'm going to take all my classes at 7 o'clock in the morning, which is not a great not a great idea, especially in a party city. I went to UCF, Go Knights.
Oh, okay.
In Orlando, Florida. It's a really, really big party school. And, I kind of fell in love with the nightlife and started missing my classes, ended up dropping out. Then tried the 9-to-5 grind. It really wasn't for me. I didn't really like it. But through that process, I dropped out for 2 years basically, and I got to find myself and figure out a lot about myself. I did some MMA, did a whole bunch of other stuff. And through that process, I picked up the Purple and Gold book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Of course.
And that pretty much, that flipped the switch for me. So at that moment, I was like, all right, I know that whatever I do, I want to buy assets, and it's likely going to be real estate, right? So from there, I kind of had to come up with a game plan. All right, how am I going to make an active income, a solid active income, and also take that active income and turn it into passive income? And that's kind of where the military came into place. I knew all about the military just because my dad was in the military. I come from a military family, so I understood that background. So joined the ROTC program. Throughout that process, while I was in ROTC, I ended up going to work for, put an ad on Craigslist basically saying, hey, I'll work for free if I can get on your job site. During that time, it was like 2010, 2011. So, the real estate market had kind of bottomed out. In Orlando, it had really, really bottomed out. That was one of the hardest hit markets.
Yeah.
There was the only people that were left in the game at that point were heavy hitters, guys that really had a lot of money to buy mini houses and flip houses at the same time. So I was up on roofs and I was painting and doing little manual labor basically to get on job sites and kind of learn what this thing is about real estate. And that was kind of a note out of Rich Dad Poor Dad. It was one of the things he talked about, like, hey, kind of providing value and going out and working for free. So I took that and did that and learned a lot about real estate in the process. And then I joined the Army, got a little money, and then I got my first deal.
Snowball.
After that, I've been just going from there.
So Dan, I'm gonna stop you there for 1 second because I think we definitely hear we hear these stories, and I think it's fascinating because it all comes from education, getting an insight, and then taking action. But I kind of like that when we get in the lab, I want to chop it up a little bit in the middle.
Yeah.
Because I think the taking action and the execution is like when people get caught up in the weeds. So when you digested Rich Dad Poor Dad, what do you think? Did it take you a while to transition into that action of, hey, I'm going to go and volunteer, exchange value for time? Or how did that look like? Did that take a while? Was it right away? What was if you recall, was that one of those first things that you did to kind of take that action?
That was literally, and to me in my life, I think that was one of my aha moments. Just hearing that story, like, man, I don't have to work my whole entire life, right? And that like sparked such a huge flame in my body that it was like, I have to do something. I have to figure out how to do this. I think in the book he talked about, he went and worked on like oil refineries or something like that, like really cheap paying jobs to learn that business as he became like a merchant marine. And he started investing in oil and things. So I basically took that same thing and went to real estate. Like, all right, how am I going to get on these job sites? What value can I provide to someone to allow me on the job site? All right, I'm a pretty strong dude. I can probably lift some lift some shingles or something, somebody help me out. And then also I was going to these RIAs, these real estate investing associations. And I found that I was always the youngest guy in the room for the most part. At that time, I was like 22, 23. I was around that age. And I was always the youngest dude in the room. And I found that being so young and being so eager and reaching out to older people, they were very receptive in coming, and answering my questions. So it was a lot easier for me to, as a young guy, to come in the room. They were happy to talk about it, happy to see someone younger that kind of wanted to learn the game. And I think it just worked well for me. So
I'm glad that you said the young part, because I know sometimes people could feel, I'm very engaged on Bigger Pockets, and I'll see a lot of newbies, or people who DM me because I'm active on the gram, as you know. Where a lot of the millennials, and I'm one myself too, but they'll reach out to me like, I don't know how to get started, and I'm maybe too young, but that's actually an advantage. I'm glad that you said that, because a lot of older, usually if there's somebody that's been there and they've probably been in that same position and they see a little bit of themselves in you. So that's a really good key ingredient right there that I like that you touched on. So fast forward, you go and you start working, you're grinding with the end goal in mind. And correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is that you have the end goal in mind, that I'm going to make this money and then I'm going to put it to work. What did that first deal look like when you first put it out there and put it to work?
So the first deal, So I tried to buy a deal when I was in college. I was still like really, really eager, but I didn't have any income. So my debt to income ratio was so low. And at the time, I got denied by like 3 different banks, and I pretty much, kind of gave up. And even though I was working on these, these job sites, for some reason, it didn't like strike me that, hey, I can take $20,000 and do some creative finance, because what these guys were doing, they were putting little money down, getting a larger loan, basically using hard money. So that's kind of the way that I was trying to go, but I had no verifiable income. So do
you want to touch on that for a few people who may or may not know what hard money is, or creative financing? Because I know we sometimes just assume that people know, but what would that really look like at a high level?
So creative financing and hard money basically is just an alternate way of acquiring a deal without going to a traditional bank, right? So traditional banks usually want, for an investment property, usually want anywhere between 20 and 30% down to acquire a property, and typically that doesn't include any renovation costs and things like that. That's just for the acquisition of the property alone, right?
Yeah.
Now in hard money, a lot of hard money loans will you can have 35% into the deal or 20% into the deal, just the purchase, right? But they'll fund 100% of the rehab, and you just pay interest only loans, and then you can, after you flip it, you get your money back basically. And then also there's creative financing. If you can find for sale by owners, they might take seller financing. They might take 5% down, or they might just do. There's a bunch of different options with that. You can.
Options is the key word.
Yep.
And I don't want to take you down the rabbit hole, but I think sometimes we get, and especially this, we go to the bank and they say no to us and we think that's it. All right, that's the NLB. Well, I can't be an investor. But really it sounds like, even from your experience, that you didn't have that knowledge yet, or perhaps it hadn't been brought to your attention that there are other options, and no somewhere here isn't no everywhere. You just got to go to the next opportunity. So I guess, is that what you used for your first deal? Was it a hard money, or I'm sorry, you said, I think you were getting to it.
Yeah. So my very first deal, it was a live and flip. So we bought it with we lived in it. We were stationed at Fort Stewart, Georgia. We bought in a decent place. We knew that we can make some cosmetic upgrades to it. We got it at 0% down. So there was, no money into it, but we also did our due diligence to make sure that if we sold it, or if we rent it out, we were going to make money on the back end, right? So I think a lot of veterans, a lot of military members usually don't do a good job of that because they're not thinking that process. They'll buy the nicest home they can get with 0% down, but then when they go to move or PCS, they're kind of stuck. Like they have a mortgage that's $1,800 and they can only rent it out for $1,700, or they can only rent out. Loss. Exactly. So we did that. We bought a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom townhouse. It was like, 1,600 square feet or something like that. And we made some renovations to it. I actually did a video on that, like the actual property, the renovations that we did.
Okay, and we'll make sure to put that in the show notes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and we lived in that for about 3 years, and then we sold it, and I made like 30, 40 off of it.
And how did you find it? Was this on market, or would you say it was a FSBO, or what was it?
No, this was just a traditional, it was a traditional loan. We financed it through. How we found it was, I think, on one of the search engine websites like Zillow or Trulia or something like that. Cool. So this wasn't anything special. Now, during that period while we were living there, right, I bought another deal, and that was my first true rental property, true, like, not unlived in, my first true deal.
How long in between after the time period?
It's about 2 years, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. Because it took some time. We wanted to save some money. We wanted to invest in Jacksonville, Florida, and we weren't living there. So this deal was a pretty inexpensive deal. So it cost $25,000, and bought it for $25,500. We put about 30 into it, and then I thought it was going to appraise for about 70, 75. But the home right across the street ended up selling for 120, like literally midway through my renovation. Wow. So yeah, it appraised at like a little over 100, and cashed out, refied 65%, got all of our money back plus about 7,000 or 8,000. So and then cash flowed. Then put a tenant in and cash flowed about $100 or so, a little over $100. So it was infinite return on investment. Yep. Still had 35% equity in the deal, and that's how that first true investment, like unlived in investment, went. So, and
I love that how you said infinite returns, because it's essentially what it is when you're using leverage and you're taking that money out and putting it back to work.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
And then the asset is cash flowing. It's as if you literally didn't spend any money, which is obviously why we love real estate so much. So that's interesting. So now, what does your model look like today? Because I know you and I talked, and I actually don't even know where you're at today. So I want you to share with the community. You started with single family, and then you started with another one. I don't know if it was done in the same neighborhood. You said it was fairly close, and
It was in a different city. It was about an hour
was
away.
it? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was relatively close. And then now, are you in different markets today, or how does it work? Are you? This was you mentioned Florida, you mentioned Georgia. Where are you at now?
Yeah, I'm all over the place, you know. So, it was so after that Jacksonville deal, single family, I kind of realized that, hey, this $100 a month cash flow, if there is any repairs. So, for example, this actual unit, I installed a low flush toilet, right? You got the one drip or two drip.
Yes,
well, they were clicking the one drip regardless of what happened, right? So I had to there was a lot of plumbing fees, like plumbers had to keep coming out. And every time
it was cutting into your profit margin.
Exactly. If they come out 3 times, that's $300. That's literally 3 months of profit. That's gone. So realizing that, I was like, hey, we got to take advantage of economies of scale. And then I pushed into a 4-unit basically.
Nice.
From there. And then after that,
now, did you still use a VA loan for that? For those out there always curious about the financing?
I've used the VA loan twice. Once was for that the very first live-in flip deal, and the second was for another 4-unit. So.
Yeah, and there is a myth out there. I think some people think that they can only use the VA loan once, but that's not true, right, Dan?
That is not true. No, you can use the VA loan multiple times. The first time there's a funding fee of like 2.3%. Every subsequent time after that, it pushes up to 3.3%, a little over that. But that's really the only difference. It's a misconception that you can only use it one time. It's a misconception that you only have to use it on a single family home. It's a misconception that your home has to be perfect in order to use the VA loan. Right. There's VA repair. I can't remember
guidelines.
Yeah. So you can repair homes with the VA loan as well. So
excellent. And also I think that one more thing in there. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you've used it. I don't use VA loans, but you have to live in the property while you're using that VA loan. But then correct. If you refinance the other one that you previously used, it's okay, right? You can kind of graduate from VA. Is that what it is? Well, I'm not sure if it works like that.
So you can get out of the VA loan by refinancing it into a different type of loan.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah. I think that's right. Yeah.
So yes, you can do that. You can earn your VA loan eligibility because there's a cap, there's a threshold that you have, like a dollar amount basically. So if you bought one home here that was $200,000 and then you wanted to buy another home that was like $600,000, well, you might hit your threshold. So you might want to refinance out of the $200,000 to open up more money for, if that makes sense.
Of course.
But yeah.
Listen, I got to squeeze the juice. I got a VA. Hear it from the horse's mouth in front of us. Dan, he preaches what he practices. Practices what he preaches. So obviously I have to ask you, because I definitely like to hear it. We see these models all the time, but VA might be for you if you're a veteran. I know actually a veteran that I work with as well, that it's a tool that's actually there's a lot of benefits that are out there for you for all the good work and service that you guys do. So
I mean, the biggest benefit is a 0% down, a 0% down loan. Now you obviously you got to be cognizant with it. I mean, you understand that you're going to be very over leveraged, 100% leverage if you put 0% down, but that doesn't mean that you have to buy a brand new home. You can buy something that already has equity in it, or something that you can fix up to give you that equity, or you can buy a 4-unit home that has something that you need to put that has room to build into it as well, so you can provide equity as well. So you can basically BRRR a 4-unit, do the BRRR strategy for a 4-unit with the VA loan. So.
Yeah. Yes, and for those who don't know what BRRR is, it's what is it? Buy, rent, rehab, refinance.
Yep. Buy, renovate,
rent, refinance. Shout out to Bigger Pockets, right?
Yep.
Repeat. Yes, rinse, repeat. If you got, I think there's a 3 or 4 R's sometimes, but you can't get it wrong, I think. And I think shout out to Bigger Pockets, man. They do such a good job. And obviously, shout out to you too, the Financial Freedom Journal. I definitely want you guys to check that stuff out, because what Dan's putting out is what we need in our communities as well as to really understand how to financially free ourselves, right, and build generational wealth. So kudos to you. All right, let's get into some real foundation. So we talked about your first deal. Is there a specific deal that you think is worth diving into? That brings you memorable lessons and gems, or has everything been a smooth ride so far? And if it has, all Blessings go to you, my friend. But I guess, can you think of any deal where you had a few hiccups and a few lessons that you kind of were able to pull from that? We're in a lab, man. I gotta go in. I gotta go in.
Yeah, big time, big time.
Yeah.
So the deal that I learned the most in was my very first 4-unit, and that 4-unit I bought out of state, and it was my first it was my first time managing from a distance.
From a distance,
and
right?
yeah,
I'm glad you brought that up because that's a very interesting topic all the time. People always feel some type of way about it. So actually, let's dive into that.
Yes.
How did you find it? How did you fund it? That's my triple F. You came right into it. The finding, the funding, and the flourishing, right? So how did you find it? How did you fund it? And then how did you nurture it along the way? Because it was from a distance. So that means that you're not there. So let's talk to us a little bit about that.
All right. So I found it. The way I found it was through, I think I used Zillow for that one as well.
Zillow King over here. We got Zillow in the building.
So I think I used Zillow for that one. I mean, I was using wholesalers and other people like in that area that I knew I wanted to go to. But this particular one, I was kind of chasing opportunity. I ended up finding it on Zillow. It was on the market for like 2 years or something.
And what area, by the way, Dan?
It's Columbus, Georgia.
Okay, cool.
So it was, so it was a rundown 4-unit. The owner was having some health issues. He was an older gentleman. He had a bunch of properties in the area, and this one he just let kind of go to crap, and it was dilapidated, holes in the ceiling. It just looked really, really bad. So I bought this. I bought it for $85,000. It was a 4-unit, 2-bed, 2-bath. It's two duplexes sitting on like a 1-acre lot. And I used hard money to finance it. And we put about $50-something thousand worth of renovations into it. Okay. Changed out the roof, new fence, completely. I did a video on this one. I've done a video on every single one of my one of my deals so far. So
I'm showing a lot of love.
Except for I think I haven't done a video on one of them yet, but for the most part, I've done a video on every single one. But this one put about $50-something thousand of renovation to it. Knew everything, literally knew everything. AC systems, everything. But where I learned the lesson from this was it was supposed to be a 4-month project. I interviewed some contractors. This has to go with building your team, right? You got a couple key people on your team, and if anyone's messed up on that team, then your project's probably going to be messed up. So in my situation, it was a contractor. I interviewed a bunch of contractors. There actually wasn't that many contractors that were actually licensed available in that area that I could find, at least.
And tell us why that's important to have a licensed contractor.
So it's extremely important to that contractors have their license and their bonds, because if something goes wrong on your property, mainly for the inspection, right? So the city inspectors come by, and if your guy's not licensed, then he's going to shut the project down off rip, right? And then if he messes something up, an inspector's going to come out and make sure it's right. If the guy, if it's done wrong, you, the owner, are going to have to pay to get it ripped out and refixed. If he doesn't have a bond, if your contractor doesn't have like bond insurance,
that's right.
Yeah, exactly. If you're
liability
insurance, exactly. Yeah. So it's basically, instead of if he messes up $100,000 worth of stuff to your property, you basically go after that money through the bond insurance that he has.
Exactly.
You don't have to go directly to that contractor, because likely he's not going to have the money to pay you.
No, I think that's great gems, Dan. Yeah. I like to pick out the gems, because we sometimes do this with our eyes closed, and you're talking and you're dropping value, and I just want to pull it out without making you go down the rabbit hole. But that's the key gem right there. Contractors that are licensed. So you picked out your licensed contractor, which is one key member of your team. Who else was there on that 4-unit that you were pulling in as well?
So for the contractor, the property manager, and that was really it for that stage of the I guess operation, if you will. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so this contractor was he was robbing Peter to pay Paul, and I didn't know that. Obviously, I wasn't on site. I did have a tenant that was an inherited tenant that kind of let me know, hey, he wasn't here today. Hey, he hasn't been here for like 2 weeks and stuff. So that's kind of how I caught on to this. Luckily, I was using lien waivers, so I wouldn't pay out any money until I verified things were actually done, and then I would, pay the money from there. So
and how was that? How was that verified? Was
money.
that via camera? Would you go down there just so people understand how to work these deals from a distance when we're talking about making progress, right? Because this was a 4-6 month project. Is that?
It was a 4-month project that ended up turning to 11-month project.
Of course, we'll get to that in a second. So how are you tracking that progress along the way?
So between driving there and then also having just like you said, video cameras. I had a property manager kind of go video camera type.
Good for you.
Like that.
Good for
you. And then that was pretty much my method of doing things. It was pretty easy to tell this guy wasn't. He would tell me he's doing this, and then I'd show up, or I'd have someone video camera, and they're like, no, that's not done. Yeah. So I ended up going through a lawsuit with this guy, and that kind of prolonged the process. Then I had to get more contractors. I ended up firing more contractors because they were just weren't really good. Luckily, I found one guy, and he ended up finishing out the rest of the project. But like I said, it ended up turning to an 11-month project.
And just to piggyback on that, the 11-month project with the hard money, you're making those monthly payments, right?
Yep. Yeah, you are making making monthly payments, interest only loans. So you're not really chucking away at the principal. You're just paying, like I said, interest only. But my saving grace was that I bought it for at such a cheap price. The mortgage or the interest only payments weren't that much more than what I had that one tenant paying. So I was paying maybe $100 out of what I needed to out of for my interest only payments after you offset what the tenant was paying.
And just so I understand, you guys were doing renovations as there was a tenant there as well. Was it one or four?
Just one. Yeah. So
that's pretty neat. That's actually a pretty neat hack that I haven't heard of before. Really.
Yes. So she was living in the very, very far right unit. And we were renovating the other ones. Now we did have to move her.
I was just gonna get to that. That sounds like a savvy strategy. Like you could almost move someone as you're moving around. Wow. Was that intentional or what, Dan? You got?
I mean, we inherited that tenant, and she was she was just an amazing tenant, and like I still talk to her today. I mean, I don't let anyone know who I am as the owner of this property, so I just don't like being known as hey, that's the owner, so let me bother him. But she's the only one that knows, and she doesn't really bother me too much. And I tell her happy birthday. I'll send her a gift card every now and again. You know what I mean? And she's good to go.
It's another gem right there, just building relationships with the people. So now fast forward, you were able to build that. How the flourishing, you still have the property management, kind of collect rent, or what does it look like as far as landscaping goes? Just getting to the little finer details of things and managing something far away. What does that look like? It's just like delegated to the property management company?
I've delegated everything. I found a solid property manager. I delegate everything to her, and then I have checks and balances to make sure everything goes well. So like I said, that tenant, she loves her unit. Like she's been there for, I don't even know how long. I mean, she's not going anywhere. It's like she loves her unit, and she'll tell me if anything's wrong. She says, hey, Mr. Dan, they didn't cut the grass this week. Hey, Mr. Dan, this is so like it's just easy checks and balances for me. And then also I have a couple of handyman in the area as well. So if I need to get something done, or if the property manager is saying, hey, I got a couple quotes and it's this much, well, I give this guy business all the time. So usually he'll go in and give me a better price, and I know for a fact it'll get done well. So while he's at the site, he also can update me on anything else that's going wrong. So
yeah, man. I love that, Dan, because a lot of us, you sometimes hear, we obviously consume a lot of content on these podcasts, real estate. We hear a lot of things about tenants being headaches, but they don't have to be headaches if you do the right screening, or you hit the jackpot, you treat them well, and they stay there. Now it's almost as if there's a partner on the ground that has interest in their where they live, and they're reporting back to you, and we don't talk about that enough. And I think because sometimes I think as investors we're not thinking of people first, but if you do think that you do your right screening, now you have boots on the ground people who genuinely care about the property. And I think we don't talk about that enough. So that almost sounds like they're part of that. You got the property management, you had the contractors, and then you had your tenant who was also now part of your team. They're paying rent, they're covering the mortgage, and they're also an advisor on site. So,
and one thing I want to note about this tenant, because I just think it's important. So this tenant is actually a Section 8 tenant. And I know Section 8 gets a bad rep.
Gets a bad repetition all the time. Yeah, that
doesn't have to be. You can screen Section 8 tenants just like you screen anyone else. So like I get automatic payments on the first, and then they pay their portion as well.
And the government
And
covers
she's just she
yeah.
literally is just a great person. Yeah. So
That's awesome. That's
but
awesome.
yeah, but that's I cash flow very, very well on that property, and I still have it today. I don't really do anything with it. I get that check, I collect the checks. The money gets deposited in my account, and that's about it. I don't really
secure the bag.
I don't really
Secure
mess
the
with
bag.
it. So
Good for you. So finding, funding, and flourishing. Dan, I appreciate that. So now let's go into keeping it real quick. Biggest mistake you've made in real estate, and again, we're always learning. So I think these mistakes are sometimes you can rephrase that into challenge. Because I think if you're able to learn from a mistake, you overcome it. However, tomato, mistake or challenge in your real estate thus far that you can recall of biggest mistake.
Yeah, the biggest mistake was just thinking that so my first couple of deals went very, very well, very, very smooth. And I thought that it would be very, very smooth going out of state, to do the same thing. So managing from a distance, I didn't have the proper system set up, and I didn't have the proper things in place that I probably should have, because I kind of thought, hey, all right, I kind of know what I'm doing here. It should work really well. It just didn't go that well. So I mean, that's a learning lesson. It cost it probably cost some time, it cost a little bit of money, but those experiences are invaluable because you take all of those experiences with you to the next deal, and you become that much better. You're sharpening your sword basically. So,
well, I mean, if I just listen to what you said and I'm a listener, I might say, well, it sounds like you already did have this system. You just look on a property on Zillow, find a property management and a contractor, hard money lender, and bada boom, bada bang. I mean, what more do you need? Is that not true? Or obviously, I'm kind of, you can see where I'm going with this. What other system might one need to kind of maybe scale their business or do this at scale the right way?
So if I were to do this again, if I was to go and build a team in a different city, before I even got the property, I would go and build the team, right? So I'd go and start networking hard with who I want, like the property manager, the property manager, the contractor, several handymen, AC dude, plumber. Like literally, I would go and network and talk to and kind of build a rapport with these people prior to even getting the first deal. I let them know, hey, I'm ready to buy. You can check my credentials. This is not. I'm not a newbie at this. However, I want to make sure my team is set. I want to get references from real estate professionals. That's one thing I didn't do. I should have reached out on Bigger Pockets to people that were in the area and said, hey, who do you use for contract? Who is your contractor? Who are you using for this? Property management. Who are you using for this? And I think that if I done that, I probably would have found a better contractor and not went through that big ordeal. So that's kind of what I mean by.
I will say this though, we're in the lab, so we've got to keep it 100. We both got our lab coats on. I will say this: do you think maybe though, Dan, that's also hindsight is 2020? Because I do see an advantage with what you did. Sometimes I think I hear this all the time. When I wholesaled my first deal, I didn't have a buyer's list, right? I went and found a deal. Then the buyers came, and I think sometimes we get caught up in the weeds. Okay, I gotta find a team. I gotta do this. So I am seeing a gem and an advantage in what you did. I have to say that because we're in a lab. And I gotta keep it 100. I hear that you took action, and then you had to figure it out as you went. Now you're making an adjustment. You know how to better deal with that and prepare yourself. But I will give you credit though that sometimes I think we try to do too much before we actually focus on what was important, which was
analysis paralysis.
Yeah. So what do you have to say to that? I mean, I'm kind of challenging you a little bit, man. I have to. Like, what do you think, Dan?
It's all good. So of course I'm going to chalk that up to hindsight 2020. Like I said, I know what experience I went through before, and I know how to mitigate that the next time. And that is my mitigation method to actually build a rapport with the team. So like I said, if I could do it all over again, knowing what I know now, that's exactly what I would have done. It wouldn't have changed. I don't think it would have changed anything. I mean, you were
going to do this anyway. We're not talking about. We're not saying that Dan was going to do it, but I think that obviously I say that to bring value to our listeners. I think it's either way, Dan did it, right? I mean, so. I think the gem that you can hear is get your team ready. Be prepared. It's like preparing for anything, right? We prepare for jobs or careers or games for an athlete, whatever it is. Be prepared. But then I think one thing that we can say is the common denominator is that you took action. Right?
Yeah, be prepared to take action.
Yeah.
You hit it on the head. So there's the difference between someone who's paralyzed by fear is they use it as an excuse not to do anything.
Yeah.
I know myself. I know I'm an action taker. I know I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
When I said, take some time to do this, I'm talking about like 2 more weeks. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not talking about like 18 months. But that's kind of where I'm going with it.
I love that. Love that. Awesome. Best advice you've ever received. Best advice you've ever received.
Take action.
Take action.
That's I mean, when it boils down to it, that's all it comes down to. We can talk, we can read, we can listen to podcasts, we can do all this stuff. But if you're not taking action, and it's not just like actually going out and doing, transacting a deal, but you can also take action by networking. Exactly. You can also take action by building teams. There's multiple ways to take action as long as you're getting to that end state goal is what the deal is. Just don't get paralyzed by fear.
I love that how you said that, because I think you're going to touch and help a lot of people with that one, because there's a lot of different ways to get started. And I think sometimes people can say, well, he did it this way, and therefore I don't think I can do that, and therefore I can't do it. No. You can do it in a way by reaching out, by partnering with someone. By again, there's people like we're getting on these podcasts and we're creating communities. Like, that's another thing that ties into the bigger goal later on. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. And like taking action and getting educated and then putting that education to work. So I love what you said about that. Let's hop into what is the worst advice you think you've received?
The worst advice that I've received.
It's out there, man. There's a lot of information out there these days, man. Are people telling it like it is? What do you think maybe I'll tie it to the I'll make it easier for you. I'll tie it to a myth buster that's out there. I know we talked a lot about, going to school and doing the right thing, which we're supposed to, but what's a myth buster out there that you think kind of ties into the business?
So I'm super passionate about like the myth buster, if you will, of hey, the only route to success is by going to college and then going to work at a job and then working until you're 65 and a half to live life. That just doesn't make any sense. No. That's the biggest thing I have a problem with, and we keep teaching our kids that, hey, this is what you got to do. You got to go to school, go into debt, and then go work for a job, dude. Like, in my opinion, I think that every kid should, every person graduating from high school should take a year off, at least 1 year, and find themselves, dude. Build as many experiences as you can. And then after that, once you kind of have an idea of what you want to do, then you go and pursue that. If you're going to get a degree, make sure it's, something that you can actually build from, or you can make a solid income so that you can push it into passive income. Take your active income and push it into passive income. That's the biggest, greatest advice I think every young adult should know. I
mean, I couldn't agree with you more, and I get really passionate about this. I don't want to turn this into a education kind of podcast, but I am very passionate about this because I feel that there is some level of it that's a little bit outdated. And I also think it's how we look at education, of the being just siloed into it. The biggest thing I remember being college is like, what's your major? And I'm like, that's like just funneling someone in. Like, what is your major? I'm here to learn. I'm here to build network connections. And evidently, I mean, luckily I was able to do that, but I feel like it's just this narrative and you're kind of thrown into that. And then your actions and your classes and it leads to that path. Like your career center leads to that. And I think it's limiting. So I like we said, because I think taking a year off after, it gets you out of that and gets you in a world where you can kind of really, I'm big on skill sets. But what skill set? Because if you look at people's careers now, I mean, you go on LinkedIn, like, what skill set can I take here and apply there? And that's another thing you can think about in real estate too, if you're listening, is like, what is my strength? I was just with, I hate you up because I saw you on Rock Cleef's podcast as well, and you guys collaborated, and I just had him on my show as well. And it literally, he was talking about how, you might be really good at one thing, so do that, and then partner with somebody else who can kind of conform or fill in those gaps. And I kind of like that. I was like, okay, that's really neat, because we don't talk about that enough. Work on your weaknesses, you should, but at the same time, if something you're not good at, kind of opens up your mind. Partner with somebody. So I won't go down that rabbit hole, but
Exactly.
let's talk about most influential person that was a big reason for your achievements. You talked about Rich Dad Poor Dad, but was there anything else that also kind of sparked that boom?
Yeah, I know it sounds cliche, but like my kids, that, you know, I had a very, 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 very strong burning desire. So like as you get motivated, right? You get motivated, but motivation fades after a while, right? But after I had my kids, it's like, man, dude, like I can't do this forever. I gotta set these guys up for success, man. Nice. I gotta, like, you know, teach them everything I didn't know, and then also, like, you know, I go to work and I'm missing my kid. Like, even though he's like 1 year old, doesn't really do much, but I'm like, dang, dude, I'm missing that. And and building passive income, building cash flow, building legacy wealth, that allows you the freedom of your time, right? It allows you to do what you want to do when you want to do it. So if I want to hang out with my kid during certain times, I'm not encumbered by a 40-hour job that I need to do, or I don't have to be anywhere. I have autonomy over my life, basically. So
I love that. It's very inspiring. And I love hearing you say that, because a lot of our listeners are in that, either that transition, or they've gotten there, or they're looking kind of for that avenue. So good stuff. Good stuff. Let's talk about real quick rapid fire questions, my man. It's coming real hot, real quick, quick. I'm going to boom blast you. Give me your favorite book right now on the spot. Favorite book.
Favorite book right now is, favorite book is The Man Who Sold His Ferrari by, I think it's Robin Sharma or something like that.
Oh, yes. I've heard of that. I haven't read it though. I
love that book. It's about like kind of like spiritual enlightenment and just kind of freeing yourself, you know, like freeing yourself and becoming a better you. And I really, really like that's one of the books I really, really like right now. Of course, Rich Dad Poor Dad is going to be on the list because it changed everything for me. Mm-hmm. There's a number of books like Think and Grow Rich.
Napoleon Hill.
10x, you know, the 10x rule, of 10X course. Rule, yeah. I'm reading Be Obsessed or Be Average right now by Grant.
That's a great one. Well. Yeah.
Hey,
I said one, man. I know you give me you give me gems, but I will say I gotta drop this because when you were talking, I heard you say this. Willpower doesn't win. Beardy Brendan from Bigger Pockets, he dropped it in a podcast, and I went and listened to it. One of my favorite. I have a lot of favorite books.
yeah.
That's hard to put in number one.
That's what I'm saying.
This one's a gem, man. You gotta check it out. Willpower doesn't win. It's about more or less how we need to change our environments. We can't will ourselves to doing things, right? So, for example, I'll give you a quick demo. You might not be a morning person, right? So you might say, yeah, but I'm going to try to wake up early. That's not going to work. But if you set up a system and you set your alarm at the door, now you got to get up and turn off the alarm. So that's a system. Or if you're unproductive and you're in the wrong environment, now you put yourself in an environment where there's a lot of people doing what you're doing. That's changing that's not willpower. You're literally structuring and changing your environment. And I was like, dude, this is golden. Cause I read a lot of personal development books, but this one was untapped, and it went back all the way to the house, right? If you're going to do podcasts, always do it here, because then your brain just kicks in that, hey, it's time to do the podcast. I'm all ready to go. Don't eat and play or sleep where you eat and play, right? It's got to be separated, siloed into different areas. You got to change your environments. I'm like, dude,
I'm gonna have to check that one out. Juice. I mean, you talk systems, so I'm just gonna say one more book, because this book like changed a lot about me as far
E-Myth?
as. No, 4 Hour Work Week. E-Myth is good too.
Tim Ferriss?
But, yep, exactly. 4 Hour Work Week. Yes. That one's a huge one for me, like utilizing those systems and kind of, you know, using your time to the best and highest use, so. Yeah.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Cool. Right back in it. Best tool that helps you excel throughout the day.
I have a book on me that is basically my my goals list. I have a goals list, and on the back of it, I have note cards in that little booklet, and I have my time scheduled on and things like that. So that's probably that's probably the best thing I have. It's a laminated. It's in the other room, but it's a little laminated booklet, and it has my goals list on it. I read it in the morning. I read it at night. It keeps me refocused, re-energized, and relights the flame. And then also I have my time schedule on it as well. So that really, really helps me out. So,
man, this is like bringing emotions to my, because I'm like, you could make this up. Like anybody that I bring on here who's doing things, it's like there's a common denominator. And I'm thinking like, I wish I was doing these interviews at like 6 years old. The amount of value that I would have gotten, like, it's just like the gems are there. I mean, we've talked about this so many times about writing down your goals, visualization, taking action with it. I mean, everyone who I know is in that seat that, you know, that I highly respect and you're doing things is doing it. So if you're listening out there, I think it's like, it's not, you should really think about, you know, what you're doing every day, because it matters. The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. That's one of my favorite books.
It's going too.
So, I can't help it. I'm like scratch yourself. Oh my gosh, I can't help it. So I like this one because it lets me know where your mindset's at. So 1 300-unit apartment building or 3 apartments of 100 units.
1 300 apartment building or 3 100s. It'd be 3 100s. The reason why is because if I wanted to reposition my assets, if I wanted to pull money out to do anything, it'd be easier to sell off one of those. In my mind, it'd be easier to sell off one of those assets and buy something else, or 1031 exchange, or just keep the capital if I needed to. Also, you could probably put those. You didn't say where they're at, so I could probably have them in different geographical areas, mitigating my risk.
See, I specifically didn't tell you where I was at because I get to hear how you're thinking, and you'd be surprised. It's actually one of my favorite questions because I get different answers every single time, and then it lets me know like what kind of blueprint you're working on. You know, so I heard people say diversification. Actually, man, y'all gotta listen to the other lessons. Podcast. I can't drop that. This is Dan's show, but yeah, this is. I like that, man. That's
probably why I like it. Yeah. And then also, you know, the ability. I assume that you're talking about 100 units, so you're probably syndicating at that point. So you're probably not syndicating with the same exact people. So it's good to have a bigger network of individuals that you can syndicate with. So that's different.
There's no right or wrong. That's why I left it open-ended to see what you're thinking. And now I can see how you connect the dots. This is interesting, man. Very, very interesting. Cool. Very cool. Very cool. Self-manage or outsource?
Outsource every day.
Cool. Leverage. Of course, the 4-hour work week, man. If you had one superpower in real estate, but forget real estate in life, what would it be?
If I had a superpower in real estate that was related to real estate, it would be a master salesman. I'd be able to sell whatever I wanted to. Literally, because if I could do that, then I'd be Grant Cardone, basically. You know what I mean? Like, I'd be Grant Cardone overnight.
You know what? I like that answer. And
power of persuasion.
But that's it. You took the words out of my mind. So I've always said this, and it ties into my answer that I would say. It's literally that. It's the power of persuasion. If you can persuade anyone to do anything, if you think about that, it's like, I can persuade you to do business with me. I persuaded you to come on the podcast. I can persuade you to lend me money. I can persuade you to sell me your asset. That's one of the best things. And the good news is there's hella books out there about it. So so that's really cool. Awesome, man. So last one right here. If you could describe a successful investor in one word, what would be your word?
All right. So the first word that comes to mind is just consistent.
Done. I love it. Yeah. That's it right there. That's the blueprint. Listen, man, this was dope. I love having you on the show, and I'm kind of a hypocrite because I love this for not only me, but I guess what I love is again sharing it with the community because I get high, I get like goosebumps, I get excited. And I really do enjoy getting connected. And like I said, we were talking for a little bit before the podcast started. I'm like, listen, man, turn this thing on because I want to hear it right now. Listen, got to plug yourself, man, because you've been doing some really good stuff out there. I've been following you. I'm going to be blasting some of your stuff when this episode comes out. Where can listeners find out more about what you're doing and your wonderful podcast and either whatever call to action you want to give? This is your moment, Dan. Where can we find out more about you?
So my major platform is the Financial Freedom Journal, and you can listen to that on podcast. And I also have a YouTube channel. The podcast, I interview great guests, and all real estate professionals talking about ways to gain financial freedom. And the YouTube channel, I also do the same thing, but also I have other impromptu interviews. Like if you go to the YouTube channel, you'll see the great Ruben the Super Connector. You'll see that video on there from the 10X Growth Conference. And yeah, exactly. And I put other tips. I do deal breakdowns of my actual deals, like going over the numbers, kind of like in more depth of what I did here. But so that's my major platform, Financial Freedom Journal. There's podcasts. You can find it on any podcast, and then also on the YouTube channel. Lastly, if you want to link up with me, you can find me on any social media. I'm always at Dan Wynn REI for real estate.
You bet. We're gonna have
Dan Wynn REI
in the show notes. We're gonna have that posted up here, everywhere. And then one thing I always say is, if I can offer, I like that Ruben the Super Connector. I like
that's
that.
What I'm saying.
So listen,
I said it, yeah.
If I meet somebody right now, it could be anybody. Who do I, and I do this all the time. I kid you not. Like, I'm that dude. I will literally create a group chat, be like, yo, Dan, meet this person, XYZ. I just ran into them. I was in Columbus. Yeah, I just thought of you. Who would that person be right now at your moment that you would, love to meet, whether it's for your podcast, whether it's for your current investments, or any stage that you're at right now in your life? Who can I keep top of mind? It doesn't have to be a name. It could be a person of some type of, investor, broker. Who is it?
Yeah, right now it's anyone that has small. So what I'm looking for is multifamily apartments, small, like 50, pretty much 50, between 20 and 50 units. I'm looking at anywhere between 1 and 2.5 mil. I'm looking for value add. I'm looking for the most part, I would like to be in the South if possible. I'm mainly Georgia, Florida. I'm also looking the Rust Belt area, like Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and that's essentially it. But that's really what I'm looking for right now. I'm trying to build a team I'm building a team. I have built a team we're trying to take down some larger assets and get into some bigger deals. So that's kind of what we're looking for now. Anybody that meets that criteria, please link me up with them. And then also the same question goes back to you. Who can I link you up with?
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, snap. It's funny. We might talk offline, because I recently, since I told you, I got access to CoStar and all that stuff, and I got a broker I'm working with, and we're looking at a deal in Clarkson, Georgia right now, like a 32 unit.
Okay.
Numbers are a little funky and a little bit high, but with that being said, strategic partnerships, I got some people. I'm not doing syndication there, guys. I'm not there yet. I am reading a ton about it. Shout out to Joe Fairless. But I am doing some strategic partnerships. So you and I might talk, because I got like a whole campaign I'm going to straight direct to owners and brokers, and I want to build a relationship, and I'm in it for the long run. So whether it's now or 6 months or a year, it's gonna happen. So you and I might talk, because you actually that's our criteria.
Yeah.
Right. So, but yeah, that for me, it would be strategic partnerships, and people who, like a guy like you. You've been in the game. You've been in the trenches. I've been in trenches a lot on the seller side, representing, partnering. That's how I offer my value. That's how I got started in real estate. But I'm looking for that person who's literally doing this and is growing their portfolio to partner with it. I think it's important to be with people who are doing exactly what you want to do. And I want to be rubbing elbows with you and being boots on the ground if I can do that. So yeah, that's what it is, my man. So obviously you and I will stay in touch, and I will be giving you a plug. But man, thank you so much, guys. It was Dan Wynn. Make sure you guys go check him out. It was a pleasure being on the show, and we will continue to build, as we always say. And I will be keeping very close attention, me and my community, to your content and the value. And thank you again for offering tons of value today.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Definitely.